Before we get started, I just want to go over a few quick housekeeping notes that we usually go over. So for those of you who don't know me, hello and welcome. My name is Linding, so I'm a registered counsellor and a speaker, and I'm also continuing my studies to complete my masters. So the kind of work that we're doing here, it's a mix of psychoeducation and practical tools. My goal is to give you insight, language, and practical tools that you can actually use in your day-to-day that you can walk out of here with. And I also want to be clear about something, that these workshops, they're not meant to be a replacement for therapy. They are meant to be complementary as an extra support, extra learning, extra reflection, and to offer a safe space for people to come to. And just a quick note that today's session is being recorded for educational purposes. It will be put onto YouTube. None of your faces will be visible. Nothing that you share will be included in the final recording either. And lastly, of course, we're discussing mental health, and today we are discussing trauma. So, which of course can sometimes bring up some strong emotions. So if at any point you guys are feeling unwell, please prioritize your own well-being. You're welcome to step out, take a breather, grab something to drink, leave entirely. It is up to you. I just want you guys to tune into what you need and honor that. And so I want to start today by asking a question. And so how many of you has sort of like reacted to something recently and immediately known that maybe that reaction was a bit bigger than the situation actually warranted? Or it was pretty accurate, pretty on point. For most people, including a lot of us here too, we're being influenced by things that happened to us a long, long time ago. And it doesn't come from a weakness. It doesn't come from denial or laziness at not moving past something. It's just how the brain works. So when something painful happens, the brain does not process it the way it does a normal experience. It treats it entirely differently and encodes it into the brain with high emotional charge. So it sees it as a threat to your very life and survival, even if it's not. And so it keeps it active and on high alert. So if at that moment anything similar happens, it can respond even faster this time. So, and that is called implicit memory. So it operates below our conscious awareness and always activates automatically. So we don't choose to activate it, it just does it for us. And what that means is that the way you react to, let's say, criticism today is being shaped by the way that you felt when you were criticized before and it hurt you. The way that you respond when somebody maybe gets a little bit too close is being shaped by the last time you let someone in and you got hurt. The way that you shut down, explode, disappear, or overfunction, none of those things are random. None of it is simply just your personality either. So, hello, no, don't worry, take a seat. So it's a learned response. So there's a workbook just in front of you as well. You can grab one of those, yeah. So, and it's stored in the back of your brain. And it's running maybe parts of, or maybe all of your life without you realizing it. And that is not something, it's sometimes not something obvious, like assault, loss, violence, or abuse. Research shows that even smaller things can produce a measurable neurological impact for you. So things such as repeated criticism or humiliation, emotional neglect, so your needs that went consistently unmet, environments where certain emotions felt unsafe to express, being told directly or indirectly that parts of you were too much, not enough, or unacceptable. And these are not necessarily dramatic events. They can be, but some of them happen so gradually and so consistently that they were never recognized as harmful at all. They were just a normal part of your everyday, just your normal day. But the brain still registered them. The nervous system still adapted to them. And those adaptations are still running today. So psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk spent decades researching this, and his findings tell us that trauma is not stored as clear conscious memory that you can just revisit and resolve with your thinking. It is stored in our physical bodies to some extent, in our nervous systems, in our physiological responses that activate before your conscious mind even knows what's happening. And this is why even just knowing about a pattern, that you have is sometimes not quite enough to change it. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to do 3 things. So one is we're going to identify the patterns. So the specific ways that your past is showing up in your present behavior. We're going to do this together as a room because research on shame says that shame cannot survive in the presence of others. The moment that you see your pattern is present within other people and is not just yours and yours alone, but is universal, something shifts within us and we don't feel so bad about it. 2, we're going to look at those patterns that we have and where they came from so we can better understand them. Every pattern seems irrational in our present life, maybe made actually complete sense in a previous part of your life. And 3, we're going to look at what we can actually do, because while you did not choose what happened to you, research on post-traumatic growth shows that how you make meaning of that experience is one of the single most strongest predictors of whether you grow from it or whether you remain defined by it. So how you make sense of it. So we're going to start, and I want to bring you into your body for a second. So some of you know that I do like to do this, and you may already be rolling your eyes, but I do have a very good reason for it. So when the nervous system, our nervous systems are even slightly activated, your prefrontal cortex reduces its activity. And so your prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that is responsible for critical thinking, for reflection, insight, learning, any sort of thinking that you need to do. And you cannot think clearly about things when your body has decided that it's not safe to do so. So before we get into the content, we need to make sure and give your nervous system a signal that it is safe, that this room is safe. So if you guys would like, I'd invite you to sit comfortably with your feet on the floor, nice and supported with the seat behind you. And we're just going to take some slow, deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. You can close your eyes if you want to, you don't have to. It is all up to you what you're comfortable with. But just take some nice, deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Extending that exhale. Extending that exhale stimulates your vagus nerve, which is a physiological signal that tells your nervous system that it's safe in this moment. So let's just keep doing this one more time. I want you to just stay with your body for a second while I name a few things. I just want you to notice what happens in your body. Try not to think about it too much. Just notice what goes on in your body and where. Your chest, your stomach, throat, shoulders, jaw. The feeling and belief that you have to earn your place. The feeling and belief that you were never allowed to say something, or it was unsafe to say something. The feeling and belief that you had to hide a part of yourself to stay safe. The feeling that what you do is never quite enough. Whatever you noticed, that is your body holding on to that. And that's what I mean by it's stored in the body. Maybe you felt something, maybe it was minute, maybe you didn't feel anything at all. But I just want to bring you back now to a safe state. So, and this is a technique that you guys can use as well anytime that you feel a little bit activated. So I want you guys to place your hands just below your rib cage, on the bottom of your rib cage, with your middle fingers touching slightly. And as you breathe in and out deeply, you're going to notice that your middle fingers separate slightly. As you breathe in, and as you breathe out, they're going to come together and touch again. It's just a little way to notice your breathing instead of just saying focus on your nose or focus on your chest. This is a little way to notice it just that little bit more. So you can use that whenever you feel a little bit activated. It's going to help just calm your system down a little bit. Maybe not entirely, but at least a little bit. So I wanted you to get in touch with that for a second, because most of us carry that with us every single day without even realizing it. And so that's what today is about. And our first activity is called the auction. I'm going to give you guys 5 imaginary tokens. They are your fingers. So we're going to have 5 imaginary tokens. And on the screen here is a list of patterns, the ways people operate, things people do. And so I want you to put up your fingers and give tokens to the ones that cost you the most energy, the ones that you recognize the most in yourself and in your life. So you can put all 5 on one if it really hits hard and if that just takes up all your time and energy. Or you can spread them out, 2 here, 3 there. Remember, you only have 5, so decide which ones are the most impactful to you. You can just spread them out however feels right for you, okay? We only have 5 tokens to work with, otherwise we're going to have way too much to count. So we're not trying to track which individually that you bid on. You can keep track of that. But we're going to look at what we as a room collectively find that takes the most energy from us. And remember that none of these are personality traits that you're born with or anything like that. They're learnt responses. So, and we'll get into that after this activity. So let's start with the first one. So just think about which ones take the most energy from you. So does anyone want to put anything for the first one? So always being the responsible one. Any fingers for that one? Oh, okay, we have a few. So 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 11. All right. And then what about the second one? So never asking for help. How much energy? Would anybody give that one a vote? No? So 2, 4, we had 5, 6, 7.
See, there's a lot of things I used to do.
Yeah, it's all right. It's just whatever takes up the most energy from you, you just feel so tired from. All right. Needing to be liked by most people most of the time. Not too much? Good. Yeah, no, it's good because exactly that. A lot of people have it when they're younger. That is so prevalent. So it's great that, we kind of grow out of that one at least. Yeah. All right. What about staying busy to avoid sitting still and feeling something?
I'm gonna put 5.
5? 8, so 4, 8. 3, so we have 11. 14, another 4. So 18. Any? No? Okay. All right. 5, constantly having to prove yourself or feeling that you have to prove yourself. All right, awesome. Next one. So making yourself smaller to let others feel more comfortable. No. 1? All right. What about just assuming things will go wrong? So being a little bit pessimistic.
Yeah, I'll go 1.
1? All right. So finding it hard to trust people. 2? Put it on that one, so 3?
Yeah.
All right. So saying yes when you mean no. So 1 there? Yeah. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Yeah? And then what about feeling like you're never quite enough? Yeah, 4? Yeah, it's just I guess how much it takes, how much you think about it, how often you do. Because as you said, often it's not all the time, but maybe those instances come up more often than you'd like. I think we can see what one we have collectively agreed takes up the most amount of energy for us, which we would really rather not like. Staying busy to avoid sitting still and feeling things. And next one is always feeling like you have to be the responsible one. I feel like those also play together a lot too. Like you were saying, some of the others play together. I feel like these two kind of do as well. But that was just something I wanted to do because I think it's very interesting to notice.
It's good to see it as a visual as well.
Absolutely. That's why I wanted to do it because, again, people feel like this is just them. Like nobody else feels these things and they don't experience the same things, and that can feel so isolating. But when you look at it like this, it's like, oh, okay, maybe some people do feel that way, but actually a lot of people do. I wasn't expecting it, and to that degree as well, to that severity. So, and that's what I wanted to point out as well, is that we're all different people, all leading very different lives with different histories, and yet we're all impacted in a very similar way. And notice how much energy these things take from us. And it's not a coincidence, those things either. So before we get into why, I want to say something important, and that is, in a room like this, we all come from very different backgrounds, very different experiences. Some of you are carrying a lot of heaviness around things that happen repeatedly over many years. Chronic stress, ongoing emotional neglect, growing up in environments where that was just unpredictable, or you're just in an environment that was unpredictable, not necessarily growing up, and where you felt criticized or felt unsafe. And some of you are carrying maybe something that's a bit more acute. So a single event or a series of events that were severe: abuse, violence, loss, assault, serious illness, accidents, things that should not be minimized, things that were simply just devastating at the time. And some of you may not be entirely sure which category your experience falls into. Just know something, that you just know that something was happening or something was consistently missing, and you haven't been the same since. And all of it is valid. All of it is relevant to what we're talking about today. And here's what the research shows across all these experiences, regardless of type and regardless of severity. The brain's response to threat and overwhelming experience follows the same neurological process. When something happens that exceeds your capacity to cope, whether that is a single catastrophic event or years of chronic stress, the brain encodes it differently than it would, say, a normal experience. And the amygdala, so that's your brain's threat detection system, it becomes very sensitive, and it becomes faster to activate and harder to switch off. And it begins detecting danger, maybe in situations that are not dangerous, because they maybe contain minor elements that remind you of or are similar to that original experience. And at the same time, the hippocampus, which is responsible for contextualizing your memory, for telling your brain when something belongs in the past or in the present, it gets suppressed. So it becomes less active, and it can't properly tell you this was just in the past and it is not very important in this moment. Which means that the past stops feeling like the past and it starts feeling like the present. It feels like now, because it can't tell the difference. Brain imaging studies, including Van der Kolk's work at Harvard, show very clear structural differences in the brains of people who have experienced trauma and compared to those who have not. Which means that the patterns on that board, the ones that we just bid on, are all neurological adaptations to experiences that we felt. So the person who never asked for help, maybe they grew up in a home where vulnerability was punished. Or maybe they were assaulted and learned that trusting others and depending on others was unsafe. You see, it's the same pattern, never asking for help, but maybe it came from a different source. And the person who stays constantly busy, like most people here, to avoid feeling, maybe learned that early, that if they stayed still, it meant feeling something so unbearable emotionally they couldn't stand it. Or maybe they just experienced a loss so significant that they didn't know if they could survive it if they sat and felt it. Again, it's the same pattern, but maybe a different origin. And the person who felt like they were never enough maybe received those messages slowly over time, over many years, from people who should have told them otherwise. Maybe they experienced something that completely shattered their sense of self, and they just haven't been the same since. They've been trying to rebuild themselves. The point is that trauma exists on a spectrum. What matters neurologically is not the size of that event. What matters is the size of the impact of it relative to the resources that you had available at that time to cope. So, for example, a child with no support system can be completely devastated by something that an adult with a very strong support system might recover from very quickly. And same the opposite way around. A child with a strong support system may survive something that an adult with no support system might not survive. Same thing. And when you look at that list, whatever your experience sits on this spectrum, these patterns do make sense. They came from something. They were your nervous system doing the best with what it could, with what it had at the time available to it to cope. The question we're working with today and working towards is not why did this happen to me? The question is, now that I can see it, what do I actually want to do with it? And so that's where we're going to go. And I want to talk about something that doesn't get spoken about nearly enough, and I think it is so incredibly important. When something traumatic happens, whether it is a single event or something that's very prolonged, it consumes your resources, cognitive resources, emotional resources, physiological resources. Your brain and your body are not infinite sources. When a significant portion of your capacity is being directed towards surviving something, managing something, or making sense of something, there is less available for everything else. And that is not a choice on your part on that matter either. If you think about what normal development requires, building identity, forming relationships, developing confidence, learning how to regulate emotion, figuring out who you are, what you want, what you value, developing capacity for intimacy, for healthy risk-taking, for knowing your own boundaries. And these happen and develop over many, many years, often over a lifetime. And they're not small tasks. They require time, they require stability, and they require a bandwidth for you to have. When trauma enters that process, particularly during adolescence or early adulthood, which research consistently identifies as some of the most critical windows for identity formation, the development doesn't stop, but it gets disrupted. Psychologist Erik Erikson mapped the key developmental stages of human life, and his research showed that unresolved challenges at each stage created what he called a psychological crisis. So an unfinished piece of development that stays unresolved until it is addressed. So it doesn't disappear, but it stays there waiting for you to resolve it. And what this means is that, for example, a person who experienced significant trauma at 15 may reach 25 or 35, having achieved many external markers of successful adulthood, having a job, independence, relationships, while maybe having unresolved developmental tasks from when he was 15. Maybe emotionally or relationally, in terms of his identity, that part of him is still working through something because that process got interrupted back then. Or maybe they take a few more years than their peers to even reach those typical success markers of adulthood. This feels like to someone else like maybe they've moved on and you haven't, that you're still stuck and you don't know why. Maybe in one specific area or a few. And that sense that people your age seem further ahead, more settled, more confident, clearer about who they are, what they want, while you're still trying to figure out what you feel that you should have figured out a long time ago, many years ago. If you have ever felt that at any point, do not beat yourself up. You were going through something which needed all of your resources at that time. To manage something, to hold yourself together through something that demanded everything that you had. That is what trauma costs. And it can feel like a pause in your life. During that time, if it lasted a few years, you were focusing on that. You hit pause on everything else. That's why it can feel like you're behind. But you may not be behind. You may simply be picking up now what trauma interrupted back then. And we'll touch that on a little bit with this next activity. So this next activity is called the detective game. And so we're gonna do this one in pairs. So the aim is simple with this one. So I'm gonna ask you guys to practice looking beneath the behavior and asking, what might this be protecting against? And we're gonna do this in 2 rounds. So this first round, we're gonna work on this scenario here. And for the second round, we're gonna have our own behaviors that we're gonna investigate. So for the practice round, on our screen, we have, it happens when I feel uncomfortable because I feel someone is upset with me. So I want you to answer 2 questions. What might this person show in behavior? So we're looking at the behavior that they show. So that's again what we just did back there. So these are behaviors, the visible stuff that you see. And then have a look at what that behavior might be protecting against. So I come up with one for each of them here. So a behavior, they might apologize very quickly. That might be something that they do because they feel that they've upset someone. And it's going to protect them against rejection. That's the goal of it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to try to come up with some more behaviors and some more protections what they might be protecting against. And there's no perfect answers. We're not diagnosing. We're just coming up with some responses with what could be happening, like a detective, making a hypothesis. So let's start with that activity. What were some behaviours that you came up with? 100%. Okay, and what about for protection? So aside from rejection, fear of rejection, what else? Absolutely. So these are all very real things, and these are just some things that I came up with as well. But everything that you came up with could absolutely be true as well. Remember, this is just a made-up scenario, so we don't actually know. What we're going to do now is we're going to now go into pairs, and we're going to come up with something for ourselves. So now it's going to be our own experiences that we're going to try to work with. So what I want you to do is not to describe the behavior, which is I think is a little bit easier for us to do. We're going to describe the situation that it shows up in, the scenario like before. So it happens when I feel criticized. It happens when I feel ignored. It happens when I feel out of control. It happens when I feel people don't like me. Whatever it is, it's the situation that it comes up in. It happens when I feel like my emotions are too much. Whatever it is. We're just talking about the situation, so try to always start it with, it happens when I feel, and then the scenario. So then we can move away from behavior a little bit. And then we're going to come into what might that behavior be protecting against. So that's what we did before. And so I still kept the example from before, so you can still look at it. So rejection, abandonment, disconnection, fear of upsetting others. These may still be valid to what your partner says. I just keep them up here so you have some sort of like gauge of like what ideas to come up with as well. We're just here to understand the pattern. So I'm going to give you guys 4 minutes each, and I'll tell you guys when to swap. So what happened in that exercise has a name in psychology, and it's called mentalisation. So it's the capacity to understand behavior, so your own and other people's, in terms of the underlying mental states that are driving it. So the needs, the fears, the beliefs that are beneath that surface action or behavior. And research by psychologist Peter Fogney shows that mentalisation is one of the core capacities that is disrupted with trauma. So when we experience environments that are unpredictable, threatening, emotionally unsafe, our capacity to reflect on our own internal states and for others is hindered. So we can't do it as much. And that creates a problem because without that capacity, without the ability to look beneath our own behavior and other people's behavior and ask what is actually happening, what is it actually about, it becomes incredibly hard to change the pattern. And maybe you misconstrued what another person is doing or feeling and what's going on for them. But when you removed the behavior from the equation and only discussed the circumstances, the patterns sometimes become a little bit more visible, and you can start to see that it's a response to something. If you just started with a behavior, it's a lot harder to see like why you're doing that behavior rather than looking at the situation and going, oh, this is the situation it happens in. Oh, it makes sense that it happens in that situation. And so one more thing before we move on is that when your partner described the circumstances and you started to form a hypothesis together, most of you probably went to something protective first off, something the behavior was defending against, a fear, a need, a threat. Maybe you did, but I want to say probably most of you didn't go to laziness or selfishness or weakness. You went to protection. And I want you to remember that because when we solo reflect by ourselves, we often go to protection second, if even at all. We are so harsh on ourselves when that is not the real reason at all. And every pattern on that board, every behavior that you don't understand in yourself, every response that seems inappropriate or irrational is protecting something. It is doing a function. The work is finding out and deciding whether that still needs protecting or not. And I want to say something that I think is really important, that you did not choose what happened to you. That's not up for debate. You did not choose your family. You did not choose the environment you grew up in. You did not choose the things that happened to you, that were done to you, or the things that were taken from you. You did not choose the timing of it, the age you were, the stage of development you were in, the resources that you did or did not have. None of those were yours to decide. But the research shows that the experience itself and the meaning that you make of that experience are not the same thing. So the experience itself and the meaning of it is not the same thing. But they can sometimes feel like the same thing. For most people, they've become so fused that it's almost impossible to split them apart. But they are distinct, and that distinction is important. Psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Colloon spent decades studying people who had experienced severe trauma, life-threatening illness, violent assaults, catastrophic loss, combat. What they found was that a significant portion of those people, not all, but a significant portion, reported not just recovery, but also growth. Changes that they attributed directly to the experience of trauma and its aftermath. They identified 5 domains where that growth appeared. Personal strength, so a revised sense of what they were capable of doing and achieving. New possibilities, so new directions, purposes, or paths opened up to them that they may not have considered or even looked at before they had experienced that. And relating to others, maybe they have a deeper capacity for empathy, connection, and intimacy. A newfound appreciation for life, a fundamental shift in what they valued and how present they were for it. Existential and spiritual changes, so a reworking of core beliefs about meaning, purpose, and what life is for. So Tedeschi and Colloon are explicit about that post-traumatic growth does not mean that the trauma was acceptable. It does not mean that the pain was worth it. It does not require you to be grateful for what happened. What it does mean is that some people, through a specific form of meaning making, are able to make something of that experience that would not have been possible without that experience having happened. And the research also talks about those who grow from their experience versus those who don't. And narrative identity research tells us about our own lives that are important. The stories that we tell about our own lives, they're important. They distinctly shape behavior, identity, self-concept, and psychological well-being. I've been talking for too long. So what we want is a coherent narrative, one where the person has been able to integrate the experience into a broader understanding of who they are, which is one of the strongest predictors of recovery and growth that any sort of research has identified. So it means being able to look at what happened, honestly, without minimizing it, and being able to construct an answer to the question, what does this mean about who I am, what I am capable of, and where I go from here? So that's a question that only you can answer, but it's a question that's worth asking. And that's kind of what we're going to try to do with this next activity. And this one we're going to build together as a group. So you're going to see an iceberg on the screen. So we're going to look at above the waterline. So this is what the world sees. So these are the behaviors that we just did before, the reactions, the patterns, the visible kinds of stuff. Below the waterline, what may be underneath those patterns. So that was also what we just touched on. So those fears, the threats, the needs, the things the nervous system learned it needed to protect against. But what we're going to do is we're also going to go one layer deeper. And we're going to look at not just what the experience wounded within you, but also what it may have developed alongside surviving it. Because trauma does not only just shape pain, it also shapes your capacity for empathy, awareness, resilience, perspective, depth, growth. Because we're human beings, and we human beings, we adapt. So here's what we're going to do. So first, as a room, we're going to populate the top half. I'm going to bring this over. We're going to call out behaviors. We just did this for like 2 exercises, so hopefully you guys are fresh in thinking about what we can put up here. So above the surface, so what are some behaviors that people might do? This is anything and everything.
Deflecting.
Deflecting, yep. Ruminating, yeah. Anger, we have anger as well. Anything else? Overthinking, yep. Avoidance, yes. Yep, shutdown, complete shutdown. And we're going to go underneath it. So you're going to come up with some protection mechanisms. So these are the things that we looked at before. There's up on the board. So shame, fear of abandonment, fear of vulnerability. There are a few. And then below the waterline, Also what capacities, so strengths that it grows. So resilience, empathy, independence, it can create those things. I want you guys to pick one of the surface behaviors as a group and then go beneath it together for these two. So you can pick one from up there, one from these ones that you came up with, another one entirely. I just want you to come up with some protection behaviors. So again, fears, needs, threats that it's meeting, and then what could they have possibly gained from that? So that's what we're going to look into. There's some questions to hopefully... Perfect. Good. That was what I wanted you guys to start looking at, was sort of not just what the behavior is actually doing for you, but also how it's benefited. Because every behavior does benefit in some way, shape, or form. So we can also, I have some more things here. Independence, adaptability, strong intuition, protectiveness, perspective, ability to read people well, appreciation for safety and connection, better meaning making, strength under pressure. Those are some more strengths as well. And so this is often what most people never see, either in themselves or others. When someone is aggressive, the world sees that aggression. What may sit underneath is fear, shame, or a need for safety and control. And alongside surviving that, they may have developed strength, protectiveness, or the ability to endure difficult situations. All of them tie in together. What most psychological suffering comes from, the patterns that bring people into therapy, that damage relationships, that hold people back, they are the result of unmet needs that were never expressed, that had never been put and taken above the waterline and had never given words to. They were never understood and never integrated, never named. And research by psychologist Louis Cozolino on the neuroscience of psychotherapy shows that the simple action of naming what is below the waterline, so putting language to these previously unnamed experiences, produces measurable change in that sort of neural integration. So the left and right hemispheres of the brain, they're able to communicate more effectively. So the experience then begins to be processed rather than just stored and tucked away. So this is why that naming matters. It doesn't fix everything, but you can see that you need to be able to see it in order to actually work with it better. And so now I've just spent an hour seeing a little bit. And so that shift from identity to understanding is important. Most people never make it, but you just did. You just got a taste of it. The work doesn't end here. For most people in this room, what we've touched on today will point towards things that will require some exploring further. With a therapist, with a trusted person, with some continued self-growth. What you can take with you is that the patterns are not who you are. They are what you learned. And what is learned with the right conditions and the right support can be unlearned, can be rebuilt and redirected. So as we finish up today, I do just want to acknowledge that for some of you, this may have brought up some heavy and strong emotions and feelings and thoughts. If that is the case, please do not try to manage this all by yourself. On the screen behind me, I do have a list of crisis and support numbers that are available if you need immediate help. Please take a photo of them before you leave. If you need to, talk to someone you trust, talk to someone you love, talk to a professional. You can come up and talk to me afterwards if you need to, because you don't have to go through difficult things alone. Sometimes looking after yourselves, being strong enough to asking other people for support too. There are some people, a lot of people who care, who want to support you, who want to help, and that support is available. So thank you guys for being here today, for showing up, and for being so honest with what we did today. Please take care of yourselves, and if things do feel very heavy, please don't hesitate to reach out. My number is available on these handouts if you need. So you're always free to contact me whenever. Thank you guys.